But tonight we welcome Ellen Taaffe, who has written a magnificent must-read book called The Mirrored Door. If you happen to have a copy, you can brazenly display it in front of the camera. The Mirrored Door: break through the hidden barrier that locks successful women in place. This book is a long time coming, and this Monday night reading is a long time coming, and I'm so excited to welcome Ellen Taaffe. For those of you that are new to Monday night reading, it was this little idea I had when I realized that, unlike the fiction authors I'd work with, most of the nonfiction authors I'd work with didn't have opportunities to do readings. It's just something that nonfiction authors don't generally do, unless you're talking about memoir or something like that. So I wanted to give the wonderful nonfiction authors that I know and have worked with an opportunity to shine and have a reading. So how this works is Ellen and I will introduce Ellen. She'll do an excerpt from the book. We'll have a little conversation. She'll do another excerpt. And there's always a chance, if you have questions for Ellen, that you can put in the chat. But this is basically Ellen's going to read from the book, and we're going to hear about the book and have a conversation. This event is 1 hour. Throughout the night, Laura Stone, who's going to give you a little wave, she will be putting links so you can purchase Ellen's book, which we really hope that you do. This, if it fits your budget. If you don't need this book, someone you know needs this book. That's pretty much a guarantee. And then, of course, we also want to encourage you to just take a moment. The book will be out next Tuesday. So we want to encourage you to put on your calendar on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday next week. Just put on your calendar right now. Leave an Amazon review on Ellen's book. It takes about 3 to 5 minutes. So we really hope you'll do that. That's a huge help to authors. Ellen, welcome. I'm so excited.
I am so honored to be here. As you said, this has been a long time coming, both the writing and finally getting to Monday night reading.
I'm so excited. How are you feeling? How does it feel? You're a week out.
I am energized, exhausted, but I still can't even believe it. I mean, you two are the only ones with books, but I posted when I opened the books, and I'm mailing some out now to advanced readers and endorsers, and I have so much to do, but I'm really so proud, honestly. I'm so happy I'm finally here.
You're finally here.
It's physical. It's here, you know.
It's beautiful, by the way. The back, the colors are gorgeous. The back cover is just beautiful. I mean, I'm sort of a geek for this stuff, so maybe maybe I think it's beautiful, but I think it's beautiful design. Gorgeous.
Yeah, Page 2 is my publisher. They just did a great job. I'm really pleased with it. And I see a few siblings here, and we all went to University of Florida, so orange and blue are our colors.
Oh, really? I never knew that.
Yeah. So they asked me, what are your favorite colors? And I'm like, well, I wear a lot of red, as many of you will see, but orange and blue. Yeah. So.
Oh, I didn't know that part. Well, Ellen, I met you when you were working on your TED Talk.
Mm-hmm.
And in that TED Talk, you had a section about the mirrored door. And do you remember our conversation when we talked about that?
Yes, I did. I was sharing. Well, first of all, I get this TEDx talk, and I immediately called to get some help with heroic public speaking. And AJ is matched with me as my writing coach. And I am like sharing kind of a word salad of all these things, these dynamics that I'm seeing in the MBA students that I teach and other women that I coach and myself. And you said, wait, what's that? The mirrored door. What do you mean by that? Which is your gift, how you listen and hear and pull stuff out of us. And it was embedded. It was a small part of the talk, but it's what I heard people said to me afterwards. What tell me about that? That resonated.
Yes. Yeah. People came up to you after the talk, right? And asked you about the mirrored door.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's sort of like, for those of you from Top 3 Book Workshop, I had a different title for a long time, which is one of the chapters, protagonista.
Protagonista.
I'm shifting, due to the TEDx talk, but also due to Top 3 and other people giving me great feedback as well.
A TEDx talk, a section in a TEDx talk that was so well received, and now here's this. So you have that in common with Mel Robbins, by the way.
Oh, I can only hope that that's the story I could write. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you the question I ask all of our authors, so I hope you're prepared. We're going to talk about your book fundamentals. For whom did you write The Mirror Door?
I wrote it for professional women who aspire for more in their careers, but feel a little bit stuck or stifled, or something isn't progressing as much as they would like.
And
so that's my target.
What's your core message to readers?
My core message is that shifting our conditioned expectations of being perfect and pleasing and likable, and a host of things we're conditioned to do as girls, when we can shift that, it can really unlock our future.
And what is your promise in this book?
My promise is when you're done with the book, you'll be able to unravel these conditioned patterns that result, and that actually can help and hurt us, and be able to rewrite your story on your terms.
I love that promise. So everybody, Ellen's going to read. Laura's going to introduce Ellen first. And then Ellen's going to read. So Laura, why don't you give us a formal introduction?
Nothing could make me happier in this minute. Ellen Taaffe is a clinical associate professor in management and organizations at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, where she is also the founding director of the Women's Leadership Program. She also speaks and coaches within Kellogg's executive education programs, as well as serving as a board director on 3 corporate boards. But after rising to the top in multiple corporations, she turned to academia, and now to becoming an author and a sought-after speaker. Through those, Ellen encourages women to step into their own leadership, let go of past messages and behaviors that block, and realize their possibilities. She helps organizations to identify and create inclusive, people-focused cultures that will enable their employees and businesses to thrive today and tomorrow. Her forthcoming new book is The Mirror Door: Break Through the Hidden Barrier That Locks Successful Women in Place, arriving in fine bookstores around the globe on October 10th. The Mirrored Door describes what many women face when an opportunity arrives, when one reflects inward and thinks that they aren't ready or worthy of moving forward. But don't worry. In this award-winning book, Ellen helps readers identify who they are, where they want to go, and how to get there. AJ?
Love that. Award-winning. First of many, I'm going to tell you, that's my prediction. Ellen, I'm going to have you set up the excerpt, but before I do that, I'd like to share with those who may not be familiar with Monday Night Reading and how our workshop operates. We don't give any critical feedback at all. We give positive feedback, and we encourage you to write in the chat if something resonates with you, a line that stands out for you, something that's meaningful, and you'll see people start to do that. And please feel free to chime in. The chat is something we also give to the author to read after the event, and it's really special. So we hope that you'll join in, and when something strikes you when you hear Ellen speak. So Ellen, why don't you set up the reading for us?
Sure. So this is a part of chapter 1, and it is a section called Perfection is Not the Price of Admission.
All right, Ellen, you're up.
Several years ago, I got a much needed lesson while sitting in on the first day of student orientation as a new business school professor. I sat in awe of these amazing, bright and shiny 20-something students from around the globe. With so much possibility in the air, there was a thrilling sense that this was the start of something big. The students smiled wide-eyed as they listened intently to the keynote speaker, hanging on every story. When she finished, she said, "Tell me what's on your minds." Dozens of hands shot up. One man asked her about her boldest career move, another questioned the timing and risk of her company changes, and a third asked for her biggest regret. I was pleased to hear so many intriguing questions and her insightful answers. But my grin disappeared when I noticed a pattern. I counted the questions and saw that every single one came from men in the class. I waited and waited for this to change, but it did not. The women never raised their hands. When I shared my observation with Melanie, the administrator that had booked our speaker, she said, "Yeah, that usually happens sometimes in the classroom too." My heart sank. I thought back to when I was 22 years old and had circled my dream school in a book called The Insider's Guide to the Top 10 Business Schools. No one knew I had bought that book. No one knew about my dream. Going to business school was always a few years out. I would look at that circled school in the book every so often and think, not yet. I contemplated applying to business school for a decade, even though I had solid work experience in my 20s. I always found a way to tell myself, "You're not ready." Each year I racked up a list of reasons it was not the right time or I would never get in. I don't have enough experience. I went to a state school. I'm a first generation college student. There are no MBAs in my family. I don't test well. I can't afford it. How will I compete with all the other students? Now, in my 30s, I finally declared my MBA wish out loud to my husband, Ned. After talking through what this would mean so early in our marriage, I took the chance and applied. More than 25 years later, I still remember announcing the good news with acceptance letter in hand to my extended family at a backyard barbecue. At my own orientation, I was proud to be realizing this dream and felt filled with potential. Yet sadly, my pride and anticipation were overmatched by a sudden sense that every hand I shook that day belonged to someone with much more experience and gravitas than I had. When I surveyed the big auditorium and counted on two hands the number of women classmates in a sea of men, I confirmed my lack of belonging and imagined an admissions error. I was at the threshold of my goal and found myself flat-footed with doubt. 2 decades later, after my corporate career, I rejoined my dream school and alma mater, the Kellogg School of Management, as a clinical faculty member in the Management and Organizations Department. I was thrilled to design and run the Women's Leadership Program. I believe that the statistics of more millennial women than men graduating from college and the increasing number of top MBA programs, including 40+% women, would eventually lead to a major crack in the glass ceiling. After all, I had signed on to a mission to advance women to the C-suite, to break through the invisible barrier that limits women from ascending to the uppermost levels. I felt called to do this work. In an inspired moment, I even changed my LinkedIn profile summary to include my mission, more seats at the table. But I learned quickly that gaining more seats was simply not enough. Here I was at this orientation, new in my job, surprised and frustrated with the women I would soon be teaching, mostly because I saw myself in them. I had expected that their generation would have let go of perfection and the accompanying hesitation. And I had thought, given their education, accomplishments, and readiness, they might dominate the discussions. I viewed millennials as the generation that would take risks and change the world. After all, they didn't have the burden of being pioneers or one of the few women at the table. Why didn't they understand that so many had cleared the path before them so that their voices would be heard? Now, I knew from the school's acceptance criteria that the women we admitted were off the charts smart and had made the most of their 20s. The lack of participation I had witnessed didn't add up. and I wanted to learn more. Perhaps it was a sign of something else. At the orientation break, I rushed to the coffee stands to see for myself. There I met several women and found them engaging, brilliant, and accomplished, maybe more so than the men. One had started her own tech company and sold 2 rounds of financing. Another woman who taught for Teach for America had turned around the literacy rates of her student. A third woman was already a manager in a top-tier consulting firm with a growing expertise in healthcare marketing. These women clearly leaned in and were successful. Why didn't they realize they brought so much of that value to their MBA program? By staying silent until they constructed the perfect question, they held themselves back, just as I had. And the crowd also missed hearing their unique perspectives. During my own MBA years, I eventually worked through my self-doubt. Simply put, taking more risks in the face of fear at that transition changed my life. For the first time as a student and the second time as a clinical professor. I've climbed the corporate ladder, become a board director, and now teach leadership. Yet I seriously wonder, what if I'd never taken that leap and applied for the MBA? And what took me so long? To be sure, there may be areas to develop and prepare for the next step, but many times we women underestimate our qualifications and realistic readiness. If my students with so much more opportunity than I had did not feel ready to raise their hands, perhaps these issues were less generational and more gender-induced. I realize now that when we hold back, it costs us our influence, our upward mobility, our peace of mind. Our silence is not only deafening, it is defeating. I began to wonder about my own workplace experiences and that of the executive women I coach outside of Kellogg. I thought about when we felt something was amiss or we were stuck. I recalled so many ambitious women who performed well, were seen in a positive light, didn't make mistakes, yet faced their own hesitancy well into a successful career. The common threads between us all seem to be a pattern of massive preparation, years of hard work, playing the part to please others, and safe face-saving choices in meetings, one-on-one interactions, and career moves. We assume the identity of a person who always has the right answer and approach, takes care of everyone else, and keeps the peace. We think of ourselves as the A student, the dependable one, the good girl, the adult in the room, who's conscientious and likable and who does not rock the boat. We are achievers. We are pleasant. We are the glue that holds teams, households, and friends together. We care what others think a lot, maybe too much. We take all these wonderful traits into the workplace where they are badly needed. This approach works for a while as we build reputations as people who can absolutely be counted on to execute and deliver. But for so many women, something happens on the way to middle management and the C-suite. In countless coaching sessions, I've heard women share with me that while seemingly doing everything that was outlined for them, they felt flat-footed, stuck in self-judgment, surprised by new feedback, or abruptly derailed by a workplace designed for a different time and by their own mindsets. Suddenly, their approach, which had previously been rewarded, was undermined either by bosses looking for more gravitas or executive presence, or by their own doubts. They weren't prepared for the dynamics of the corporate ladder and the expectation that they take smart risks, share opinions, and convey a strong presence that seemed to come naturally for men. Their ambition to lead others, make a meaningful impact, and influence the direction had not shifted, but their foundation felt shaky. We are taught early that playing the part and awaiting permission is the way it works. Our instinctive approach to perfect, please, and prepare enables women to excel early, but it gets in the way of what we want and what could be next. The mirrored door. My contention is that we women face a powerful barrier and often invisible obstacle that we must break through to make it anywhere close to bigger leadership roles. It's not the glass ceiling, it is the mirrored door. The mirror door is what makes us reflect inward and question our readiness. The mirror door is our own self-criticism and doubt that stand between us and the future we desire. It obstructs our view of what's beyond us and tricks us into believing our limiting self-perceptions. This leads to overthinking and frequently underacting. We question our skills, fit, ideas, and others' judgment, and we slow or halt our momentum. We hesitate, avoid risk, and forget the value we can bring. We hold ourselves back, preparing, perfecting, pleasing, portraying, pushing ourselves, and even policing our words and actions, as if we cannot pass over the threshold until we see certainty and perfection in that mirror. In fact, many of us are so busy trying to measure up to unrealistic expectations that we don't even realize that what feels like an insurmountable wall is actually a door we can open and walk through. When we do, by asking questions, putting our less than perfect ideas forward, speaking up for ourselves and what we want, and more that we'll discuss in the coming pages, we strengthen our position. Through risk-taking and the rewards of lessons learned, we truly become ready, but that is on the other side of the threshold. When we step forward and enter the room, we can have a seat at the table of decisions and impact. All too often, we are waiting in the wings for our turn, for someone to notice us and our hard work. This waiting casts us as the supporting player, playing small rather than as the lead in our story. And it quiets that little voice, that inner knowing that tells us we can be so much more.
So good. So good. Yes. I'm so glad you shared that excerpt so we can really see that setup for what you mean by the mirror door. And in the part one of your book, you do acknowledge and talk about the very real experiences of women in the workplace. And yes, the glass ceiling, you're not at all suggesting it's not real. You're just saying there's this other thing that sometimes we can't even get to the glass ceiling because we're stuck behind this door.
Absolutely. I do believe in the glass ceiling.
Yeah.
We have so much work to do before we even get to that. And there's so much focus and people know of the glass ceiling, but there's a lot that happens before that.
And would you say that our ability to open that mirror door and cross the threshold, as you so eloquently described it, also helps us to deal with the glass ceiling?
For sure. I think that when we, the antidote is to really take action, because that growth is on the other side of action. But often we are spending our time doing what worked before and not adapting to as expectations rise.
So I always ask authors, what is the change you want to see in the world through this book? And now, since you set up the mirror door, seems the best time to ask you.
I want to impact the discussions, the mindsets. I want women to know we are more ready than we realize. Most of all, and to go for it.
And I'm also wondering, you talk about in part 2, where you talk about relearning success strategies, relearning. Why did you say it that way? Why did you say relearning?
Because I have identified 5 success strategies that help us until they don't. And so they are preparing for perfection, eagerly pleasing, fitting the mold, working pedal to the metal, and performing patiently, waiting to be noticed. And those are all great things. And I go through in each one of them, the power of that, the pitfall, the how it's both a pitfall for ourselves personally, but also from a perceptual standpoint, that how we get viewed externally and how we pivot out of it. So for example, the preparing for perfection that's great. We deliver excellence, do kind of amazing things. We do loads of preparation to make that happen. But the pitfall is that we are stuck in an identity of perfection and maybe don't delegate because someone else is doing the work, or we can't move forward and make decisions sometimes with imperfect and uncertain outcomes, which is what happens in leadership. And so, so the circumstances around us change, and we're still wanting to do the same amount of preparation or deliver everything with such perfection. So, in that case, the action is working with asking for help, and whether that's delegation or talking to your manager about, what do I need to deliver A+ work on, and when can I come in with a rough draft? But if we view everything in one way, so we have to relearn, what does that strong delivery excellence mean, and add some dimension to it. Otherwise, we will stress ourselves out and we'll become looked at as like the worker bee, the person we want on the team, but not the person to lead the team.
Ooh, that's significant. And it reminds me of, you talk about the 80-100 rule. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Sure. And I think maybe I'll shift to the other reading, because that's in one
Oh
of
yeah, that's in there. Yeah. Okay. So let's.
yeah, but you know what? I can also shift to the other one too, especially because it involves one of my brothers, or a few of my brothers too.
Well, it's up to you what you want to do, but I want to hear about the 80-100. So if we don't cover it in the reading, I'll ask you about it after that. Why don't you set up this next excerpt?
Sure. So let's see, let me go back to that. This next one, so I go through the book, go through a chapter on each one of those success strategies. And the third part of the book is really about, as you step through the metaphorical mirror door and move into action, that's where all the growth and grit and true gravitas is. And so this is a chapter called Courage Before Confidence. And I'll go ahead and read when you're ready, AJ.
I am ready. Let's go, Ellen.
Okay. When I finally got pregnant for the first time, I was thrilled. I always knew I wanted to be a mom. Following the excitement of this news, I began to question, how could I make it work with my career? Work had been my focus for so long that it was tough to consider how I could fit in motherhood. But I knew I loved my job at Quaker Oats too. It was who I was. We lived in a wonderful family-friendly neighborhood in Evanston, Illinois back then, and enjoyed how our street came together for block parties, Halloween, cookouts, new babies, and dog walks. Every year, neighbors, regardless of whether they were parents, gathered for the first day of school. One morning, as we eagerly awaited the school bus, I saw one little girl trembling, tears streaming down her face. Her parents tried to calm her, putting her hand in her older brother's palm. He clasped it and coaxed her onto the bus. "You'll be fine. You'll have fun. You're a big girl now," cried her upset parents as the bus pulled away. The image of the girl's small face and hands plastered to the window haunted me. What if I'm at work when my daughter needs me? Who will soothe my child? How am I going to do all of this? My mind raced. The words my neighbor called to her scared little girl were also exactly what I needed to hear. Later that day, I shared my first day of school emotional saga with my mentoring circle, my cherished group of 9 peers who met monthly to support each other in our careers. My eyes welled up as I detailed the morning event and confided my doubt in my ability to both be an executive and a mother. Fortunately, I was talked off the ledge with my friends' stories and lessons learned. When it was time for our speaker, Sue Wellington, to join us, my mood perked up. I was about to meet the Gatorade division president for the first time. During the Q&A, I asked how she handled her big job and her role as a mom. I recall that she paused and she took in my anxious voice along with my round stomach, which forced my distance from the conference table. I still remember her response. I was bullish enough to think that 80% of me is better than 100% of everyone else, she responded. And it turns out that she was right, as evidenced by the staggering juggernaut she led in the Gatorade brand. Sue not only envisioned the strategy, but she was a beloved people leader who developed a talented team and created a winning culture of innovation and collaboration. I never related to fake it till you make it kind of advice, but I was blown away by her clarity and confidence that day. While I initially thought I could never be that bold, something stuck for me. I never used the term bullish, and I didn't have the ego to say I was better than others. Still, her idea jolted me like the lightning bolt that adorned the Gatorade bottles. I wondered how her advice could apply to me and began to try it on in my mind. I'd spent years with the unsaid thought that I could run circles around some of the guys who got promoted ahead of me. Maybe her perspective could be the push I needed to enter new roles and situations with the confidence that had eluded me. 25 years later, I still carry Sue's words with me as I face new opportunities with uncertainty and doubt. And I help those I teach and coach evaluate their doubt through the lens of what I call Sue's 80-100 rule. This could include a recognition of high performance, a need to set boundaries on time, or a boost to go after something big. Courage is the prerequisite. I still feel grateful that Sue inspired me with the right words at that pivotal time. When I think back to her advice, I now see that her bravado was really bravery. To be sure, if you know Sue, you know she has some confidence too. But for me, the enduring message was one of courage. Over time, I began to see that Sue had the guts to bet that less than 100% of herself at work would suffice. She knew enough about herself to risk taking that stand instead of wallowing in worry and doubt. The confidence was the outcome of her mindset and the action that followed. I believe courage is the prerequisite to confidence. Our society tells us we need confidence first. It's on the agenda of every women's conference and said far too often to women in performance reviews, wrapped up in words like presence and gravitas. To be sure, how we show up does matter, as do others' perceptions of our trustworthiness, competence, and warmth. But we have to start with ourselves and understand that we can understand what we can tap to move ourselves towards smart risks and growth. We can't go around our obstacles. The only way out is through. When we face something new, uncertain, or challenging, we need courage to move from fear and doubt into action. Whether we succeed or fail, we will grow from that action. We learn from our wins or by seeing what we would do next time to avoid a loss. We learn that we can win and go after something even bigger next time. We gain the knowledge that we can fall and get back up. We know we can move forward with worries and uncertainty and still figure it out. Our courage to act builds confidence. When we reflect on ourselves negatively in front of the mirror door, we are searching for the confidence and certainty we think we lack. Instead, we need to tap into our courage, of which we likely have a rich reservoir. When I coach women who come to me on a quest for confidence, they're disappointed at first in my belief that it's an outcome. The implication is that they will walk out of our session without it. But when I raise the concept of courage, their eyes open wide. I see their wheels turn as they recall and share what it took for them to accomplish their long list of achievements. Dare I say that a woman in business is inherently courageous? She has entered worlds where she historically didn't belong, and sadly is sometimes still treated as if she doesn't fit. Women who step into their own, make their choices on their own terms, and take center stage in their life have mountains of courage. It is up to us to call on that earned trait to guide ourselves and others into action, to grow and gain the confidence that results from repeatedly tackling and surviving our trials and tribulations. When we face and overcome challenges, we become stronger, wiser, and more formidable. Swagger. The women are great. I just wish they had more swagger. I was asked to prep a high-ranking partner at a financial firm for her to talk to and inspire MBA women to have interest in her field. She was eager to see if this dynamic was true of the women she'd speak to that night. I asked, how do they differ from the men? The guys in my company, the guys waltz in like they own the place about once a month to ask me for their next assignment, a better office location, or a raise. It's obvious they're trying to get FaceTime with me. I'm so bowled over by how easily they ask for what they want, but are in no way ready for. She added, it's like it's their birthright. Excuse me. I could never have done that at their age. It's hard for me to do it now, 25 years into my career. How do the women approach it? She laughed. They don't approach it at all. They seem intimidated to have a direct conversation about it, yet are the ones working the longest hours. I don't want them to bug me constantly, but I worry about how they'll hold their own against the guys. They're so good at their jobs, they just don't know it yet. As with bullish, I don't fit with the idea of swagger. When I pose it to my female students, most of them feel the same, not because they lack drive or confidence, but because swagger is simply not a style that easily fits or is familiar. I believe women do not aspire to swagger, even though some corporate leaders may expect it. Also, women who do swagger face a greater penalty in the workplace, as it seems it trades off the warmth that other orientation expected of them. Swagger is a no-win situation for women, especially in male-dominated and/or aggressive work cultures. It's time we create a middle ground, a swag her that shows our guts and self-assuredness on our own terms. This requires an objective knowledge of our successes, talents, and uniqueness. It requires a growth mindset with which we can let go of perfection and continuously learn on the job. And it allows us to play a bigger game of our own making. It's about saying yes to the next role that we can grow into and learn instead of saying no because we don't feel ready enough. It calls on us to recognize that men ask for what they want. We need to take a page out of their notebook, but to do it in our way. If we seek to please, we don't risk difficult discussions such as asking for what we want. If we proffer, our work and future possibilities may go unseen. Although a senior leader may complain about brazen entitled behavior, they may also believe us if we don't think we are entitled to ask for what we want. When we can identify how our success strategies work for us or against us, we have a choice to keep the status quo or stretch in new ways with courage and commitment. I'll stop there on this one.
Yay. I love that you wrote about the 80-100 rule. That gives me so much pause. That's one to really think about. And what did you mean by you think we have a reservoir of confidence? Why do you believe that?
I just think this almost gets into the Barbie movie, but I almost feel like there are a lot of wonderful things about being a woman. There are a lot of challenges in our society and in our business world with being a woman. And so just getting through the days, the weeks, the good times and the hard times, whether it's giving birth or working in an organization where you don't see people that look like you. I just think that it takes a lot of courage. And I think women of color even have more courage because they face many more challenges as well.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that question. I wanted to ask you about your author journey and just shift gears a little bit. So what has been surprising about it? I mean, no one comes into authorship with expectations that are exactly met. that's just it's a wild, windy road. But what really surprised you about becoming an author?
Well, right now, how good it feels. I think that along the way, how hard it was, and how you can learn um, you can learn so much to be able to do that if you have an idea, and how important consistency is. So having a group to write with and to learn from was so important. And when I got off track, which I did, I left for a while. Life just got busy. It was so hard to come back. So for any of the people in the workshop right now, stay with it, stay with it. Because it was so hard. But I can remember you saying the porch light is on for you. I wrote that on a post-it and had it on my monitor um,
Aw.
time. Even, and I would see people who were like 3 cohorts after me publishing books and trying not to feel like, oh, I'm a loser or whatever. So, what I love about in your subtitle of your book, where, the ability to write a book that changes lives, including your own. I would say the other hard part of writing is you're done writing it and it's put together so great, and then you have to market it. And so I feel like, for me, I'm opening my own mirror door in
Yes.
this session every single day. I will talk to people and they'll say, wow, you're really active on LinkedIn now. Really wasn't as much. I was more of a lurker. And I instantly feel like, oh, am I overdoing it? But no, I'm not. So sort of that I'm going through my own shift of like, I don't want to be too big out there. I have a message to share, and the only
Yes.
going to get out in people's hands and ideas and minds and actions is if I put myself out there, and it's super hard.
Yeah.
Super
So
hard.
you've got another mirror door. So maybe there's not one. Maybe there's just a
Yeah.
series of mirror doors, like a
Oh,
really
yeah.
horrible fun house.
Well, I have a chapter called The Mirrored Maze, which is about the
Yes.
workplace triggering mirror doors, but I would say that's true of the book business as well. And I think, someone else, many people have said you write and teach and coach what you have to learn. And
Yes.
that's definitely happening for me. Um, but I just feel like I learned so much through the journey also of how putting yourself out there um, makes for a better book. Like adding your
Yes.
own stories and being vulnerable, as hard as it is, really helps.
That was challenging for you. You weren't sure about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do
Well,
you go ahead?
I was going to say, I think it's my own, wanting to show up like, I'm more perfect than I am, or that, I got it going on. And so revealing things about myself or other people that are important to me um, was really hard. It is. But I don't know, over time, I've become more of like, I'm an open book, ask me anything. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, story's the best way that we connect, and you have some of the most memorable. Now, you didn't read it. We do have a little more time. I wonder if I could coax you into reading the baseball story, which is, I believe, in the top of the other, close to the other excerpt, and you can keep reading if you want. Can I coax you into reading? Because you have these great stories from your childhood that I are just so Ellen to me. Of course, I think you do have siblings here, so yeah,
okay. So,
they might be featured in them.
yes, not by name, fortunately for them. All right. So I had just told a story of my daughter, Katie, who is in class tonight, hearing that a girl got her name on the chalkboard, and that was sort of, she was in elementary school, and it was sort of like a girl had never been on the chalkboard. And then I go into this story.
And feel free to keep reading, Ellen, and I'll keep track of time if you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And the names were changed to protect the innocent and the guilty. I'll just say, I recall an afternoon when I was a few years older than Katie. I was thrilled to be included in a neighborhood baseball game with my three older brothers. In the preceding years, I had felt like one of the boys, but our time playing together had faded when I became a tween. That day, I savored every minute of play. The fun ended, though, when an outraged boy named Timmy quit the game in disagreement once he was called out unanimously. In his frustration, he took his equipment but didn't go home. He stayed on the side watching with a sneer on his face and his pricey bat and ball in hand. We continued playing with our battered equipment, including a tennis ball, which enabled far bigger hits and many home runs. I relished my triple, then waited on base. There were 2 outs and the game was tied in our final inning. My brothers egged me on to steal home base and win the game. When the batter connected, I took off, driven to be the victor and to show Timmy that his stunt hadn't stopped the game. On my chariots of fire run to home, Timmy blocked my way with his arms up like a football player. I couldn't get around him. I didn't know what to do. I had to make it to home base. Completely out of character, I matched his middle school anger with my own. I punched him and ran to the plate, ending the game as my brothers cheered our victory. I delighted in their pride and shock that I stood up to Timmy's unsportsmanlike behavior, making that run worth more to me than the win. I was on a higher plane with my newly earned respect and sudden sense that I was finally part of their group again. When I returned home, though, my pride was cut short. I knew from my mom's serious expression and the sway of the dangling telephone cord that she had just hung up with Timmy's mom. I was in trouble. With a disappointed look in her eyes, she said firmly, "A young lady doesn't fight." This was one more lesson in how I was to act in the world. I was supposed to go along to get along, even when blocked or treated unfairly. I should be nice to the Timmys of the world. Our education starts early. We're conditioned to be nice, likable, helpful, non-combative, and pleasing. It's part of the fabric of girls' upbringing and women's lives. We learn the roles that we should play from our well-intentioned families, schools, and communities. The workplace validates these expectations as we find ourselves under a microscope that evaluates how we should show up to and for others. AJ, that's a stop there. I can continue on to another story.
Oh, that's fine. I love that story so much. And I also love the story where, and we can just talk about it, the story where you cut your fingernails. Do you want to just tell?
Want me to read it real quick?
If you want to, yeah, but I think these are 2 important stories about realizing that the way you move it's when we as girls realize, as we grow up, that we have to change the way we're doing things because of our gender.
Yeah, so this is in a chapter called The Mirrored Maze of Work. "I'm ready to play," I proclaimed as the door slammed behind me. Outside, the cars were parked to provide clearance to our front yard basketball court for the upcoming game. There was extra space for my brother's running leaps and lunges that kept the ball in bounds. Fortunately, I made my announcement before the sides were picked. I hoped to get on a good team where they passed me the ball. I had practiced my three-point shots endlessly because I knew the boys wouldn't cover me so far from the basket. In reaction to my announcement, faces froze. Everyone suddenly stood still as statues. The warm-up shots ended as multiple basketballs dropped to the pavement. Bounce, bounce, bounce. No one would look directly at me. Bounce, bounce. They whispered under their breath. Time seemed to pause. "Ellen, you're not going to be able to play today. We have an even number already," my dad finally said as a younger neighbor walked up the driveway. I wondered if I heard him correctly. My jaw tightened. I stood there stone-faced and silent while a familiar flush spread across my face and neck. Minutes later, I ran inside to wipe my burning eyes and saw my pink polished fingernail clippings in the bathroom trash can. You'll scratch the boys if you play, I was warned earlier when we were deciding to play that afternoon. I had solved that problem, or so I thought. In all candor, I really wasn't sure I wanted to share this story of my beloved father who told me I could do anything I set my mind to. My brothers, who were young teens back then, have always been some of my biggest supporters. I'd like to simply erase this memory. At the time, I told myself, that's just the way it is. Oddly enough, none of them remember it, but my younger sister and I sure do. You're going to include the time you cut off your nails, right? My sister assumed when I told her about my book. You always had such long polished nails back then. You were so mad. She was right. It was my first little heartbreak and entry into a world that was built for others, not me. I was confused and wondered why the rules had changed. I didn't know why I had suddenly been excluded, as if a no girls allowed sign had been placed on the basketball hoop. In hindsight, I learned that even when girls or women follow the prescribed rules, we can still be locked out. I realized what no one says aloud, that I didn't belong or should choose other places. And hardest of all, I learned that our heroes and mentors can sometimes let us down as they unwittingly keep up the status quo. This day probably motivated me to prove myself, show up, and hold my own with the guys in other venues. It highlighted the resilience I'd need to enter places where I was the only woman and didn't know the unspoken rules. It was clear they didn't expect me on their turf and thought I should already know that. With the advancements of Title IX, the law intended to equalize opportunities for girls, and the expansive availability of girls' sports, you're probably thinking we've moved beyond stories like this. Or have we? Maybe this story is not about basketball at all.
Hey, I put you on the spot to say that one, but you rallied, so thank you. I love that you honor your family so much and also share that story and how that connects to then moving into spaces as adults. And what do you think is when a woman enters a space and feels like maybe they shouldn't be there? I mean, what are some good strategies to overcome that? And if we're facing that part of the mirror door where we're not sure how we can push back against those established rules that are often unspoken.
I think find someone to connect with in that group. I think the high majority of men want to be allies. They don't always know what to do. And so I think we can help with that. But I also think we have to remind ourselves we were brought into a role, we got the job for a reason, for our skills and talents. And just because we can walk in and be alone, we can't let that fool us into thinking that like we don't deserve to be there. I think you got to figure out, what are you up for? Are you okay being a bit more of a pioneer? Or are you not up for that at that point in your life? So you also want to know what you're walking into as well.
Ellen, I am so proud of you. I'm so thrilled for you. Do you have a launch event next week? Anything that we can tune into, or something you want us to pay attention to next week?
Not next week, but the following week.
Okay.
And it's getting announced tomorrow.
Oh,
I have, through Top 3 Bookshop, long held a view that one day Trisha Tim, who's here tonight, and Gina Cox and I are going to be on stage giving a triple keynote. And so until that time comes, we are doing a Trisha and Gina's the host of the evening, and Trisha is going to be sort of moderating a conversation. And we'll be talking about women, the workplace, authorship, all kinds of things. It's on the 17th. 7 p.m. Eastern. It will be announced tomorrow on my LinkedIn, out to my email list. I think Trisha and Gina will share it too. But so that's a virtual, anyone can come event. I'm doing a couple other book events for companies or organizations over the next few weeks. And I'll actually be at a conference next week with one of my brothers, Paul, who's here. Yeah, so I'm very excited. In all my almost 40 years of working, have never been at the same event.
Oh, that's amazing.
We're going to go out to dinner that night of the launch, if I'm still awake.
Awesome. Awesome. So everybody, the Mirror Door comes out on October 10th. If it fits your budget, we hope that you will get a copy today. And give it to someone, give it to yourself if you need it, give it to someone you love. If you already bought a copy, maybe you want to get another one for someone that you love, donate it to a library, donate it to a school. This is an important, life-changing book. And this is Ellen's life's work so far. So we hope that you will support her in this. And please, oh my gosh, 1,000 times, please leave a review. Leave a review, leave a review, leave a review. I also want to point out that we'll be back on November 6th. November 6th, Laura, with another reading of a book that actually comes out tomorrow. Street Smart Safety for Women by Laura Frombach and Joy Farrell. Laura's down there. I see ya.
Phenomenal book.
Yeah. So we hope you'll join us next Monday for the next Monday night reading. And we're so proud of you, Ellen. And you'll see me on your book birthday. Enjoy the week, Ellen. Just have the best time.
Thank you. And thank you all for so much support. AJ and Laura, I can't thank you enough. The whole Top Read community.
You did it. Woohoo.
No, it's coming. It's real.
It's real. It's real. All right, Ellen, have a great week. And thanks everybody for showing up to support Ellen.
Thank you everyone for being here.
Have a good night.